My wife and I have been married for 14 years. We have two kids together, ages 10 and 7. I'm 39, she's 41. We met when I was working at a gym as a personal trainer, and she was a member there. We got married quickly, within 2 years of dating. For the first decade of our marriage, I thought we had something solid. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but nothing that ever made me question whether we would make it. I work as an assistant manager at a sporting goods store now. I left personal training about 6 years ago because the hours were terrible and the pay wasn't consistent enough to support a family. The store job pays around $60,000 a year with benefits. My wife works as an administrative assistant at a law firm. She does okay for herself, doesn't make quite what I make, but it helps. Between both our incomes, we're able to afford our 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina, and keep the kids in decent schools. Everything started to unravel about 3 months ago. It was a Saturday morning in September. I had a day off, which was rare because retail means working most weekends. My wife had told me she was going to a yoga class that morning, something she'd been doing every Saturday for the past 2 years. She would leave around 8 in the morning and usually be back by 10:30 or 11. Our kids were at my parents' house for the weekend, which also wasn't unusual. They loved spending time with their grandparents, and it gave us a break. That particular morning, I decided to surprise my wife by joining her at yoga. I have been trying to get back into better shape, and I thought it would be nice to do something together. She has been asking me to come with her for months, saying I would love the instructor and the class. So I looked up the yoga studio she mentioned before, the one about 15 minutes from our house. I got there around 8:30, figuring I would catch the middle of her class and maybe join in. When I walked into the studio, the front desk person greeted me and asked if I was there for the 9 o'clock class. I said no. I was looking for my wife who should be in the 8 o'clock class. The woman looked confused and said they didn't have an 8 o'clock class on Saturdays. Their first class was at 9:30. I got a little nervous, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe my wife had mentioned a different studio, or maybe I remembered the time wrong. I asked if my wife was a member there and gave her name. The woman checked her system and said she didn't have anyone by that name registered. That's when the panic really started to set in. I thanked her and left. My mind was racing at that point. I sat in my car in the yoga studio parking lot for probably 20 minutes, thinking, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe she switched studios and forgot to tell me. Maybe her phone died. But another part of me, the part that was getting louder by the second, knew something was very wrong because she always communicated with me. I drove home and started going through our calendar on the fridge. Every Saturday for the past 2 years, she'd written yoga in her handwriting. I pulled out our credit card statements from the last few months. No charges to any yoga studio. No charges for yoga gear or classes. Nothing. I checked our bank account. No unusual withdrawals that might indicate she was paying cash for classes. By this point, my internals were screaming red alert. I thought about calling her, but something stopped me. If she's been lying about yoga for 2 years, she would just lie about this too. I needed proof. I am not the type to accuse anyone without first digging. I learned this from an old military buddy of mine. I spent the rest of that Saturday researching private investigators in Charlotte. By Monday morning, I hired one. His name was Mike, former cop. From the reviews, he knew his stuff. I met him at his office and explained the situation. He didn't seem surprised. He said he gets cases like this all the time. We agreed that he would follow her the next few Saturdays and document where she was really going. Man, I was nervous hiring him, but I needed to know the truth. The first week of waiting was torture. I acted normal around my wife, kissed her goodbye on Saturday morning like always. She grabbed her yoga mat bag and left at 8. Mike was already in position down the street. He followed her. She didn't go to any yoga studio. She drove to a house about 31 minutes away. Mike watched her go inside this house and not come out until around 10:15. He got photos of her entering his house, photos of a man answering the door, photos of them embracing before going inside. The second Saturday, Mike got even more. Video of her arriving. Video of the same man greeting her at the door, this time kissing her. More photos. Timestamps on everything. By the third Saturday, I had a complete dossier. Mike had even run the plates on a car parked in the driveway. The car was registered to a 35-year-old man who worked as a restaurant manager at a chain steakhouse. The private investigator kept digging and found out he's never been married, no kids. Mike handed me a folder with everything one afternoon. Photos, videos, timestamps, license plate information, the guy's full name and employment. I sat in my car outside Mike's office and looked through it all. There were pictures of my wife smiling at this man, pictures of them kissing, pictures of her going into his house with that stupid yoga mat bag over her shoulder every Saturday for who knows how long. I felt like I couldn't breathe. That night, after the kids went to bed, I confronted her. I didn't say anything at first. While we were in bed lying next to each other, sitting upright, she was on her iPad, and I was on my phone with the TV playing. I reached over to the nightstand and grabbed a folder and told her to check these out. She looked confused. She opened it. I watched her face change as she flipped through the photos. She closed the folder and pushed it away from her. She started crying immediately. I asked her, "Can you explain that? How long has this been going on?" She said 2 years, 104 Saturdays, give or take. 104 times she kissed me goodbye, grabbed her fake yoga mat, and driven to another man's bed. I asked who it was. She said it was someone she met through work, but he didn't work at her firm. He was a client's son who would come in for some meetings about 2 years ago. They started talking, exchanged numbers, and it escalated from there. I asked why. Why would she do this? Why would she lie to me for 2 years? Why would she risk our family, our kids, everything we built? She said she didn't know. She said she felt stuck in our marriage, like we'd become roommates instead of partners. She said he made her feel young again, exciting again. She said it had nothing to do with me, that I had done anything wrong. That made me angrier than anything else she said. How dare she act like this was some kind of midlife crisis that just happened to her, like she was a victim of her own feelings. She made a choice, 104 choices. I asked if she loved him. She said she didn't know. She said she loved me too, but she was confused. I told her to get out. She asked where she was supposed to go. I said I didn't care. Go to his house. Since she's been spending her Saturdays there anyway. She started sobbing, saying she didn't want to lose me or the kids. I told her she should have thought about that before she spent 2 years cheating on me. She packed a bag and left. She texted me about an hour later saying she was at her best friend's house. I didn't respond. I sat in the empty house, trying to process everything. 2 years. How had I not known? How had there been no signs? I started thinking back over the past 2 years, looking for clues I missed. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized there had been signs. Small things that I would brush off at the time, like how she started putting a password on her phone about 2 years ago, saying it was because of work. I thought that was BS, but I didn't put any more thought into it, or how she would become less interested in sex with me. She started dressing nicer on Saturdays, doing her makeup even though she was supposedly going to work out. Sometimes she would come home smelling like cologne, which she would explain away by saying the yoga studio was in a building with other businesses and she must have walked past someone. That was BS. Cologne doesn't attach itself to you by walking by someone. All these little lies, stacked on top of each other for 2 years. I called my parents that night and asked if they could keep the kids for another day. I didn't tell them what was going on yet. I just said my wife and I needed to work through something. The next morning, I started looking into divorce lawyers. I never thought I would be in this position, but here I was. I found a few good reviews and set up consultations for the following week. I also started researching North Carolina laws about infidelity and divorce. That's when I learned about alienation of affection and criminal conversation. I never heard of these laws before. Apparently, North Carolina is one of only 6 or 7 states that still has them. Basically, you can sue the person your spouse cheated with for destroying your marriage. It seemed almost too good to be true. My wife kept texting me, asking if we could talk. I ignored most of them. Finally, on Thursday evening, she called. I answered. She asked if she could come home, if we could talk in person. I said no. She asked if I was going to divorce her. I said yes. She started begging me not to throw away 14 years of marriage over a mistake. A mistake. That's what she called it. A 2-year mistake. I told her that a mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. A mistake is not carrying on a secret relationship for 2 years. She asked if there was anything she could do. I said no. I told her I needed space and hung up. I had my first consultation with a divorce lawyer on the following Tuesday. She was straightforward and professional. She explained that North Carolina is an equitable distribution state, meaning assets don't automatically get split 50-50. The court considers various factors, including the duration of the marriage and each person's income. She said that because we'd been married 14 years and had almost similar incomes, we would probably be looking at close to 50-50 split of assets. Then she asked if I knew who the affair partner was. I said yes, and I had photos and documentation. Her eyes lit up a little. She explained the alienation of affection and criminal conversation claims in detail. She said I could sue my wife's affair partner for damages. She said these cases can result in substantial settlements or judgments. Some have been in the hundreds of thousands, even millions in extreme cases. She said given that the affair lasted 2 years and I had solid proof, the case looked solid. I asked what kind of settlement I could realistically expect. She said it varies wildly based on the defendant's assets and income. For someone making around $55,000 to $60,000 a year, as a restaurant manager, we would probably file a large amount to scare him, maybe $500,000. But a realistic settlement would likely be somewhere in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, still substantial enough to hurt and make a point. I told her to prepare the paperwork. Over the next 2 weeks, we worked out the details. I filed for divorce. I also filed a lawsuit against the affair partner for alienation of affection and criminal conversation. We filed for $500,000. When my wife got served with the divorce papers, she called me immediately. She was hysterical, begging me to reconsider. She said she'd do anything, go to therapy, quit her job, whatever it took. I said it was too late. She'd made her choice every Saturday for 2 years, and now I was making mine. She asked about the kids. I said we would work out a custody arrangement through the lawyers. She said she wanted 50-50 custody. My lawyer had already told me that was the most likely outcome unless there was evidence of neglect or abuse, which there wasn't. As much as I hated what my wife had done to me, she was still a good mother to our kids. When the affair partner got served with the lawsuit, things moved quickly. His lawyer contacted my lawyer within a week. He wanted to settle. Going to trial would cost him $35,000 to $50,000 in legal fees alone, plus risk losing even more. The lawsuit and all the evidence were also a matter of public record now. His employer could find out. His family could find out. Everyone could find out. After some back and forth, we settled for $45,000. He had to take out a loan and borrow from his family, but he paid it. I didn't care where the money came from. It wasn't really about the money anyway. It was about holding someone accountable for their role in destroying my marriage. My wife moved into a small apartment on the other side of Charlotte. I stayed in the house until it sold, which took about 3 months. We agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds. We agreed to 50-50 custody, alternating weeks. We divided up the retirement accounts and savings. During those 3 months, the kids adjusted to the new reality of their parents being separated. My 10-year-old took it harder than my 7-year-old. She asked me multiple times why we couldn't just work it out. I tried to explain in age-appropriate terms that sometimes adults make choices that hurt each other too much to come back from. I didn't tell her the details of the affair. That's not something she needs to know, at least not now. Maybe when she's older, if she asks, I'll tell her the truth. But for now, I just told her that her mom and I were not getting along anymore and decided it was better to live separately. The house sold in December, right before Christmas. I used my half of the proceeds to rent a 3-bedroom townhouse closer to the kids' school. My wife used her half to buy a small condo. We had our first Christmas apart. The kids spent Christmas Eve with me and Christmas Day with their mom. It was strange and sad, but we made it work. Now, 3 months after I first discovered the affair, I'm settling into this new reality. I have the kids every other week. On the weeks I don't have them, the house feels empty and quiet. On the weeks I do have them, I try to make everything feel as normal as possible. I still work at the sporting goods store. I've been taking on extra shifts when I don't have the kids, partly for the money and partly to keep myself busy. My wife and I barely speak unless it's about the kids. All communication goes through text or email. I found out that she's no longer seeing her affair partner. Apparently, he wanted nothing to do with her once everything blew up, and he got sued for $45,000. I can't say I'm surprised. He was happy to carry on a secret relationship, but once there were actual consequences, he bailed. That's the thing about affairs. They exist in this bubble where reality doesn't apply. But once that bubble pops, people scatter most of the time. I've started going to therapy. Not couples therapy, just individual therapy for myself. My therapist has been helping me work through the anger and betrayal I feel. Some days are better than others. Some days I barely think about it. Other days, something small will remind me of what happened, and I'll feel that same gut punch feeling all over again. My therapist says that's normal, that healing isn't linear. I'm not sure I believe in the concept of closure anymore. I don't think I'll ever have a moment where I feel completely at peace with what happened, but I'm learning to accept it and move forward. The kids are adjusting better than I expected. They seem to have settled into the routine of switching houses every week. My 10-year-old still has moments where she gets sad or angry about the divorce, but they're becoming less frequent. My 7-year-old seems mostly unfazed, probably because he's too young to fully understand what's going on. I'm grateful for that. As for my wife, I don't know what she's doing or how she's coping. That's not my concern anymore. She made her choices, and now she must live with the consequences. I've heard people say that you never really know someone, even after years of marriage. I used to think that was cynical. Now I think it might be true. I thought I knew my wife. I thought we had a solid marriage, a good partnership. Turns out I was wrong. Or maybe I did know her, and I just didn't want to see the parts of her that were capable of doing what she did. Either way, it doesn't matter now. What matters is that I'm building a new life for myself and my kids. A life where I don't have to wonder if the person I'm with is lying to me. A life where I can trust my own judgment again. It's going to take time, but I'll get there. The $45,000 from the settlement went into a savings account for the kids' college funds. At least something good came out of all this mess. And in the meantime, I'm just taking it one day at a time.